All right, so I had a bit of a rough night last night, and so now having a bit of a rough day today, subsequently, but managed to show up and get some work done. Um, Two big things I'm wanting to do with that, though, is it's one thing to show up, but when you show up on days when you're not like at your best, or at your best is putting that a little bit too optimistic. It's more of like if you're like way below what you would normally consider like tolerable. I was noticing that it'll be a lot better if I really take the time to acknowledge that and accommodate for that, because it's better to show up and do just a bit of something, even if it's a lot slower or what have you. As long as it's not to the point where I'm being just like destructive with my time and my work, I think it's a good thing to do. Because otherwise, I'm not performing very well, and then I'm down on myself about not performing well, and then it's very negative, and then it's harder to maintain habits like these. So, yeah, it took a second to start back up, but not too long, because I did have that bookmark. It was more of like, which one do I want to bite off next, and how do I want to do it? So it was a matter of integrating the twist cursor. So you can see I'm in it right there. So I had a huge chunk of kind of complex code, and it wasn't immediately self-evident of where to put everything in and how to get it all to play nice with the rest of these systems. But with like just step-by-step trial and error, I definitely got there. That's something I notice a lot of times when I am kind of not working as well. I really do need to take it in those increments, because I just don't have like the patience. No, not necessarily the patience, but I don't have the capacity to do as much in my head. I kind of have to just like sit down and take it line by line. Yeah. So, first off, I decoupled the part that I was porting over, the rendering from the system itself. And so I began integrating that. I quickly found the commonalities that I could then kind of eliminate. And I was able to just go step by step through that process and eliminate. And I ended up kind of combining the stretch and the twist value, because it seemed like it was kind of applying to the same thing. Well, not kind of, it was, at the end of the day, what it was being used for was the same thing. So I did that. And you can see I'm integrating the rendering now. And this is where I ran into something kind of weird. So I sat here for a while deliberating over, like, is there some way I can minimize the complexity and the amount of this data that I'm going to need to pass through? Right now you can see I'm just passing in two things, just two poses. I found a cool thing as well, because I usually just work with floats. So I was converting everything to a float, and then I just found a replacement for that. But because I really want to minimize the amount of data I have to transfer over a network for this rendering system. So I sat here forever just being like, oh god, no, like, wait, do I have to do that one as well? But eventually got over that hurdle. The thing I consistently have to relearn is to just kind of just lay things out, do it the verbose, kind of messy, over the top way, and then you can go back through and you can compress it or find commonalities and clean things up. But I feel like I have to just relearn that every time. You can see it's not working properly though. That purple line isn't lining up with what's happening with the yellow. And that's where I noticed that given some variable naming schemes, it created a very weird issue where I ended up collapsing two variable types, two variables together that shouldn't be collapsed together. That they have very discrete behaviors, and they're even different data types entirely. So it's kind of interesting to run it into that. So it was actually quaternion instead of I think that was a vec3. So getting that passed in correctly was made a big difference. And you can see I'm waggling my hand around a lot. I was noticing there was a trailing effect, which usually means there's an order of operations problem where it's using some old data to work off of. So I was able to go up and find where that was at and fix that. One thing I was pretty happy with as well is that variable that I was packing down or collapsing down into one was something that I was actually able to use for the virtual glove orientation. So before, when you twist and the glove goes out, it would keep twisting with your hand, which wasn't the end of the world, but it wasn't really the behavior you're kind of wanting. So instead, it would maintain the orientation that you started with, but not in such a fixed, constrained way. Like if it went out, right? Like let's say this was your hand and this is the virtual glove. If you twisted it and it went out, it wasn't gonna stay like that. Stay like this regardless of your orientation. Instead, it kept that same thing, but you're still able to move it around. It's very, very nice. Yeah. Which also helps you get a better feel for how the whole mechanic is working. So I was happy to run into that. And then I started having to tackle the thing I was avoiding, which is juggling all this input. So I talked a bunch about how these controllers, like VR controllers in general, they have more anemic input in terms of buttons than your classic gamepad. At the very least, there's 4 buttons missing. If we had them, it'd be amazing, but we don't. But it's very easy to run into this issue where, with input, because for us, at the very least, the whole reason to do VR, or a big reason to do it, and what makes it special, is the level of input. The level of input is just unprecedented. And so it's weird to have unprecedented input, but then for it to drop the ball when it comes to buttons. It's all we need is at least give us 2 more buttons for each hand. At the very least, right? Doesn't seem like a big ask. Yeah, so this is something we ran into in the past, and so we've kept coming up with weird, clever solutions. And so this was something I kind of cut my teeth on for the last part, which is I can kind of do a rocking motion with my thumb for A and B. They're kind of right next to each other. And based on which one you press first, it'll do a different thing, and then the subsequent one you press will do the modifier behavior. Which may not be perfect, but I thought it'd be good kind of stopgap for now. It might, with enough testing and visual feedback, could be half decent. But I was hoping to be something like a quick little thing I could throw in and then keep moving on, but it definitely did not turn out to be that way. I definitely had to rewrite it, I think 3 or 4 times before I got it right. And it's usually a lot to do with I think the main things I got hung up on was